All right. Welcome, everyone. I am Kelly Ross, the work group facilitator. I'm excited to be with you today. In our 2 hours today, we're focused on developing wildfire mitigation grant program for residential properties. We have 4 presenters who will join us. If you're in the working group, you can, of course, as always, use the chat to share your comments and questions. And everyone can use the survey, which Deanne has just put a link to. I will also email you this link after the session. We are meeting next week, August 5th. We'll have one presenter, and then the majority of the time is for discussion. At the end of this meeting today, David's going to remind us of the 5 requirements in the legislation, and that's where we're going to start our time next week. We're also going to add August 19th for the same purpose. We think we're going to probably need more time than just next week. So you don't yet have that invitation, but it will be coming to you shortly. Up on the screen now is the way that we ask everyone to interact with one another. We are live on TVW, and we're also being recorded. You can get to the recordings for any of our past sessions on the working group website. Working group website, also in the link that Deanne has posted, has all kinds of information. So if you haven't been there yet, you might want to visit. And thank you if you filled out survey number 5 for us. That will soon be available on the website. And as I said, survey number 6 is open and the link is right there. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us today. And I want to invite you to get to know Mayor Steve Crowder, Town of Paradise, California. Mayor Crowder, thank you for being with us. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about how your community is rebuilding from your wildfire event in 2018.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. We have been rebuilding since the fire. It is a long process. We lost about 95% of our town. Right now, we are probably 40% back with our housing stock. We had a population of 26,500 pre-fire. Right now, we are at 11,080. We're in the process of undergrounding our entire town with all utilities. That was one of the number one concerns about our citizens after the fire. We had utility poles blocking a couple of exit routes during the fire, so that was huge for them. We're making good progress. It's, our town monument is the orange cone right now, and probably will continue that way for the next few years foreseeably. But our undergrounding should wind up next year, and our paving project hopefully later that year, that same year. We are our commercial is lagging coming back. We're also on a septic system throughout the entire town. We are working on a sewer system now, which hopefully will help. But it's always seems to be the struggle. What comes first, the businesses or the rooftops? We've had a lot of challenges along the way, insurance being a huge one for us right now. We are pretty much all on the California Fair Plan. We just had Mercury Insurance come up here in person, look around, and they agreed to write 200 policies, which they've done, and we're grateful. Right now, I think insurance is probably one of our biggest obstacles to overcome, because you've got, before the fire, your average insurance was probably $1,200 to $1,500 a year. Ours right now is about $5,500, and we're probably about the average range. It can go up to $10,000-15,000 a year. So our builders are telling us that most of the houses that fall out of escrow for them is due to insurance. So we're trying to mitigate that as best we can. invoked some pretty tough ordinance, defensible space. And I think that's helped. I think that's what kind of helped Mercury right here. And that's kind of a snapshot of where we're at 6.5 years later.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Steve, for coming and spending some time with us today. I had read that you and your council and your residents are engaging with IBHS and their wildfire prepared home standards. What steps is the city doing around that? And was that insurance related specifically?
Probably we initiated that, I would say 2020, 21, and decided to adopt that for the insurance reasons. And CAL FIRE is huge on defensible space. We already had some of it in place, such as no wood fences touching a house. But the 5-foot vegetation clearance from the house was not part of our plan at that time. It is now. So we just want to be as fire safe as we can. And like I said, we've adopted probably some of the strictest weed control that anybody's got, and we are enforcing it. And we're trying to make ourselves. We've got fire safe communities that have started, and it's all helping. I'd like to see it go a little bit quicker, but it's happening. And like I said, our biggest obstacle right now is insurance.
Thank you. What other questions do folks have on Mayor Crowder? Yes, Senator Short.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here, Mayor. Give us a sense, what is your town with the fire? Was there any, surrounding public land, just land that frankly, the town has no control over? And was that really what was so challenging with the fire?
Well, the fire started about 15 miles from us in a place called Polga, and there was state and federal land there. It was overgrown. The wind that day was absolutely horrendous. We just had the perfect storm. That fire was on us in probably an hour and a half. We had 150 spot fires in Paradise before the fire even got here. It was moving at like 3 football fields a second. We couldn't get aircraft up to fight it because of the wind. We had, I saw the video that CAL FIRE did when they pulled up on the scene in Polga. The engines weren't even stopped when they were requesting all the help they could get. And I would say probably by 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the majority of the town was gone. And it was into town by 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was horrendous. And yeah, it did start outside of town. And so I'm a huge advocate of defensible space, and we have some areas that abut Paradise right now that are not our area. They belong to, other jurisdictions. And, you're only as safe as your neighbor lets you be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tony Craven.
Hey, just asking about getting insurance. So the fire was about 5 years ago. Typically, you don't reburn inside of 10 years. So why is the insurance companies being, I'll just say, it's so difficult to get insurance? Because you're a pretty safe bet for a few more years.
Well, we are, and that's why Mercury Insurance, they physically came up and looked at us. But there's been issues here with costs of insurance and insurance companies saying, the losses that they've had in the past. We are rated a fire prone, even still, fire prone area. We have a high fire rating, and you're absolutely right. We are nowhere near where we were 6.5 years ago, and that's what Mercury saw. But throughout California right now, the insurance companies are not happy to write insurance here. We have a good part of them have pulled totally out of the California market for homeowners insurance, and that's the other reason is we don't have a wide choice here. So we have the FAIR plan, which virtually is insolvent, and now that the LA fires happened, it's really insolvent. So I don't know how they would handle another big loss of any kind. If it was a private insurance company that was writing this, the government had come in and take them over. But so that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Steve.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Mayor, for being here. Steve Brooks, the Washington Fire Chiefs. I'm just curious on a couple of fronts from a public safety perspective. As you're rebuilding, I know you said you were from 26,000 down to 11,000. As far as your public safety services, I apologize. I'm not more familiar with whether you had or have a municipal fire or police department, or if CAL FIRE is your exclusive fire, and if you have county sheriff. But I'm just wondering if you could talk about how you're doing that, how you're incrementally, or what it's looked like to bring back public safety services that are commensurate with the community rebuild. And in follow up to that, I'm also curious about how this event has impacted your insurance rating on the structural side. With, I believe you all are an ISO state, and so was your ISO rating impacted by this, and how has that been reviewed?
Well, our insurance rating, believe it or not, even after the fire, hasn't changed much. We have 6s, we have 4s, and the funny thing, I mean, they could be right next to each other. So I don't quite understand the rating, but yeah. As far as our public safety, we had our own police department, which we still do, and we are fully staffed as we were with 26,000 people, because we still have the same area to serve. Fire in, what was it, 2012, I believe, we did have our own fire department, and we chose to go with CAL FIRE. We've been with them for, 10, 12 years. They do an outstanding job for us. I am so grateful that we have them. We're every year we're surrounded by wildfires, even if they don't come into Paradise. We just had one very close to us up in Magalia, which is just above us, and there were evacuation warnings. But we are we've always had mutual aid, but with CAL FIRE, I mean, there's no hesitation. They're on the ground. They want a helicopter. They can call and boom, they have a helicopter, and that's been huge for us since our fire, just in the surrounding fires. And I think it's the best decision we ever made.
Thank you. We have a question in the chat from Hillary Lundegren. And Hillary, I'm going to read what you said, but you come off of mute if you want to say more. Have you adopted home hardening codes and ordinances in addition to defensible space requirements?
Well, we were WUI requirements before the fire. However, most of our homes were older and were not WUI compliant. We've since everything here will be pretty much WUI compliant, plus the IBHS standards. We also have a grant, and we're doing home hardening to the homes that did survive. People could apply for the grant, and it's just getting started. And I believe it's up to $150,000. It includes roof, windows, siding, whatever the case may be, to get these homes that are not WUI compliant, basically WUI compliant.
Thank you. Hillary, do you want to say any more about that, or does that answer your question? All right. Thank you. Thanks. David.
Yes, Mayor Steve, how's the building community working in your area around the kind of the heightened building requirements? Are they advocates? Are they um, trying to raise awareness of cost, or just how's that relationship going with your homeowners?
Well, I mean, overnight from the fire, we went in in 2018, a average 3 bedroom, 2 bath house probably was somewhere in the vicinity of 200 to $225,000. That same house the day after the fire was probably $400,000, and it was due, and it did have something to do with rebuilding costs, but lumber went ridiculously high. Then we threw COVID in there, and we had a shortage of contractors. Now it's kind of leveling out. We still have our average home price is probably 400,000. Um,
Mhm.
the contractors have adapted very well, and so have the people, because as far as California, we're still affordable housing. Um, so our biggest issue with contractors is we had an influx of contractors after the fire, and a lot of them were here kind of to take advantage of people. So that was a problem that we had, and we still have to a point. So we just enacted some different building standards as far as issuing permits and what have you, that just went into effect yesterday. So those are kind of the challenges that we've had with contracting.
Thank you. I have another question in the chat. Again, Melissa, I'm going to read what you captured, but come off mute if you want to say more. Can you advise on the funding source for helping homes become WUI compliant?
Well, the grant that we got was through FEMA, and I forget it. I believe it was about a $5 million grant, and there were conditions on it. That's the only grant that we received for standing homes to get home hardened. And there may have been more money out there. I don't know. But that's the only one that we secured.
Thank you. We've got a couple more in the chat, if that's okay. Is there any enforcement mechanisms in effect to require WUI compliance?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's you submit building plans, and you've got to be WUI compliant, otherwise you don't get a permit. So, and again, the WUI was here before the fire.
Mhm.
So yeah, and again, now same thing with IBHS.
Thank you. One more in the chat. How has the community responded to the requirements? Do they voluntarily comply?
I think especially the people that came back after the fire feel very good about it, because if you went through it and you lost your home, you're going to do everything in your power to make sure, or mitigate that can happen again. So we've gotten a real good response from our citizens about that. We have a lot of vacant lots in town now, and so the last 2 years we've been really heavy-handed on enforcing, no weeds higher than 4 inches, because that was a huge fire hazard, and we've gotten some resistance to that a little bit, not from the people that are living here, but the people that are owning the lots and are living out of state now and don't care. So that's where we're at with that.
Thank you. Melissa, those were your questions. Do you want to say anything else, or did we answer what you needed?
I think that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mayor Crowder? All right. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Next, I would like to introduce you to Chief Frank Bigelow, Deputy Director of Community Wildfire and Preparedness and Mitigation, CAL FIRE. Chief, over to you.
Okay.
Thank you. I did prepare a presentation that I will start up now and then share my screen. So give me just a second to, I don't know if I have that option actually.
You should, the green button at the bottom.
Yeah. Only competent with with,
Technology.
yeah, it's, oh, because my screen's vertical, I had to click the more button.
Oh, okay. Yes. Now do you see the option for
Yeah,
sharing?
got it. Okay. So let me know when you can see that.
We see it. Yes. Thank you.
All right. So let me start out first by, applauding Mayor Crowder for the work that they're doing in Paradise. What a horrific thing for anybody to have to experience, and they are being leaders in the redevelopment and the building in that community, and we really applaud what they're doing there. Some of the just kind of want to touch on a couple of the things Mayor Crowder mentioned. Firewise communities. California has been leading the country in a number of Firewise communities that have developed, and these are really community-based groups that have come up that really want to do more to develop their community and to be more fire safe, and of which we have 1,280 in California now, with 22 more in review at the moment. So we're going to eclipse that 1,300 mark very soon. One of the questions that was brought up or was mentioned about the level of risk that has been reduced in the town of Paradise as a result of the fire. And that's absolutely true. And Mayor Crowder correctly pointed out that they are still in a very high fire hazard severity zone. And here at the Office of the State Fire Marshal, we are the ones charged with developing the criteria and then implementing the maps that show the 3 zones. So there's a moderate, high, and a very high designation across the state of California. And those are based on hazard. So when we talk about hazard and risk, oftentimes those words get conflated, and really they are 2 very distinctly different things. In layman's terms, for hazard, we're looking at long-term effects. So what is on the landscape now, and then in 30 years, we're trying to plan to create building standards and regulations for long-term placement of that home. Homes aren't things that typically go away in a short period of time. And we want to make sure that the standards that we build those by are going to be there for a long time. And so we're forecasting a long ways out. So then when we come back to risk, you could be in a very high fire hazard severity zone, but have absolutely no risk. You could have fortified your home and built it out of concrete with a metal roof, and it's just basically an impenetrable fortress, and have cleared the vegetation 100% around your home. So there are ways, we're not advocating for any of that, by the way, but the point there is that even though you're in a very high fire hazard severity zone, you could still have relatively low to moderate or even no risk associated with where you've placed your home. Turning back to, the things I was going to talk about in the Office of the State Fire Marshal in California, just a little bit about our organizational structure here, who we are. There's very few of us here in the office. CAL FIRE is an organization of over 12,000 people, 12,555.5, and growing 2,400 more over the next 4 years. But the Office of the State Fire Marshal only makes up about 300 of those people. But in the office, we set the standards for the fire code for the state of California. We also set the fire training standard for the fire service. We do curriculum development and train over 12,000 firefighters annually. We also inspect all state facilities, state-owned facilities, leased facilities for fire and life safety. We have a fire engineering and investigations division, which has an arson and bomb unit, a K-9 unit, a fireworks unit. We also oversee the pipeline industry in the state of California. And then finally, for me, I oversee the Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation Division, which is more solely focused for our conversation today. Some statistics of some of the things that we do in our office is, I'll start on, with the wildfire prevention grants, kind of in the bottom right there. On average, we give out about 100 wildfire prevention grants for things like fuels reduction, for development of documents like local hazard mitigation plans or community wildfire protection plans, helping local jurisdictions bolster the safety elements of their general plans, and then also for educational purposes to get the word out about fire safety. This year, the voters in California voted for Proposition 4, which was a bond of $1.5 billion that went to various entities, of which CAL FIRE was the recipient of about $650 million of that $1.5 billion, spread out over various programs, one of which was mine, the Wildfire Prevention Grants Program, which we got $85 million to bolster some of our statutorily appropriated $80 million. So we have about $135 million to give out through that program this year, which we're really excited about. The application period is already open for that. But we also do things like defensible space and home hardening and damage inspection for post-emergency assessments. We're the state liaison for the FireWise communities we talked about earlier. Our teams work in the land use planning section to work with local jurisdictions on the cultivation and development and enforcement of the safety elements of their general plan. We issue burn permits. We do cultural burn permits. So we track all the fuels reduction that our crews do out in the state. So a lot happens in our group of 63 here in our CWPM division. We also have a community risk reduction program. This is a newly created program. About in September of last year, we assigned a couple staff to really dive into the statistics and the data behind all of the things that we do. So they're focusing on those things you see in the links there at the bottom of engineering, economic incentive, enforcement, emergency response, and education, and being able to bring all the statistics, the data, and put them out into a media format in all the media platforms to ensure that people are getting the best education they have. Everything from smoke alarms to the number of Christmas tree fires that we have, just things like that people are like can really relate to, that they can hone in on to give them a better sense. So now we're going to kind of talk about some startling but real statistics and dive into some stuff here. So homes that ignite by wildfire have a greater than 90% chance of completely burning down in a wildfire environment. And the reason for that is there just aren't enough resources to put a fire engine and defend a house that's on fire on every single fire. Fire crews are stretched, even in a state like California that has a master mutual aid agreement for over 900 fire departments across the state of California, with CAL FIRE's 352 engines and all of our other resources that we bring to the table. This is the reality that we all face in not having enough resources to put a fire engine at every house. So what do we need to do to help bring that number down? We need to do things like, as Mayor Crowder mentioned, create defensible space. And in California, we have some of the most robust laws around defensible space and for building construction for new homes. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So as Mayor Crowder also mentioned, the 0 to 5 foot clearance, which they said weren't in their previous iteration of their ordinances around their community. Now, as a part of the wildfire prepared home for IBHS, because this standard is coming out and the governor issued an executive order for the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection to get that regulation across the finish line by January 1st of 2026, we will see a regulation that will go into effect for all new construction for Zone 0. And those regulations, and if you're interested in what those look like, the latest plead language was posted on the Board of Forestry's website about a week ago. And it gives you an idea or sense for the direction that the board's going. I think they're going to have one more iteration of that, and then it's going to go through the approval process through the Office of Administrative Law. So the 0 to 5 basically in a nutshell means to have limited to no organic material around the 5 feet surrounding your home, to have no attached, as you can see, fences that touch your home that are wood, and keeping your that immediate 5 feet clear of combustible material. Then the next thing is home hardening, and this happens in two ways. One, at construction, and as Mayor Crowder also mentioned, the timing couldn't have been worse for them to try to rebuild their community with the COVID and supply chain issues, having to rebuild right after. We've seen some of those prices relax. My wife and I just finished and moved into about 96 days ago, not that I'm counting, into our brand new home that we built. And we built to the Wildfire Prepared Plus standard. And because we live in a very high fire hazard severity zone, I went through the process with IBHS myself. I got the designation last Tuesday, and I also turned to Mercury Insurance and was able to successfully write a fantastic policy with them for $3,400 a year. I know it still seems high, but it's fully covered for everything I need, and we have insurance. So for us, it made sense. For all new construction, we require all these things in California. Chapter 7A, which will soon become Part 7 of the building code, which will go into effect January 1st of 2026, currently known as Chapter 7A, requires all these things now if you live in the state responsibility area and the very high fire hazard severity zone of the LRA, which is the local responsibility area. But that's not really the problem. The problem is the current stock of homes, the million homes or more plus that are out there that weren't built to this standard, that were built in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and on up, that just don't meet this standard. And these are the things that we have to educate people about, to taking a little bite of the elephant to try to meet this standard. And we tell them, just start with 0 to 5. Just get the material away from your house. Give your house a fighting chance to survive. Most homes, and we've known for decades, to just put all this vegetation right around our home. And we all now know, or should know, and we're educating people on, that's just not safe. It's just going to lead to your home being more susceptible to being destroyed by wildfire. So these are, I'm not going to read all these things off to you, but these are the things that are included in our recommendations for people to do to retrofit their home. And as we're on that subject, we too at CAL FIRE have a financial assistance program for homeowners up to $40,000 per home. This is a joint powers authority with the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, where we have stood up a complete program, and in 6 pilot communities across the state, we've already retrofitted 45 homes. In not every case does it meet the Chapter 7A of the building code or an IBHS certificate, but our goal is to get those, to achieve those. But with $40,000 and the amount of work that some of these homes need, it gets them a great start, especially in the areas that are more prone, or the aspect of the house that's more prone to wildfire. So there are incentives and programs out there to help people. So these are some of the home hardening efforts that we're working on, is bolstering our WUI codes. We have a real estate disclosures program. So when you sell your home, you're required to disclose to the buyer all the things you've done to your home to make them more safe from wildfire. And there's a whole list of those things. We also have on our website a low-cost retrofit list. These things can go from like caulking cracks on the exterior of a home, moving the combustible material away from the base of your home, or even something as simple as during the day, go inside your garage and close the garage door. And if you can see light coming in from under the garage door, you need to replace the gasket because embers can get in from underneath there. So it's little things like that that we can help get people to start taking that first action. And then once they do one thing, they start to feel pretty good, like, okay, well, what's the next thing? So that low-cost retrofit list is really the kind of the gateway drug that we get people hooked on wanting to do wildfire preparedness things. And then finally, I just mentioned our home hardening financial assistance program. Next, research. We are tied at the hip with groups like Fire Safety Research Institute from Underwriters Laboratory, or their National Standards for or the National Institute for Standards and Technology, or the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. We are turning to those experts to study every aspect of how homes are being destroyed by wildfire. And that includes everything from gutters to eaves to windows, and every orientation of windows and every type of window, because those things do matter. And if we're going to start asking people to start investing money into their homes and into these things, we want to make sure that the things that we are telling them to do are the correct things that will give them a chance to prepare. Another research thing that we're working on is structure separation. As California strives to kind of meet these our housing market needs, a lot of people are turning to ADUs and putting them very close proximity to their home. And those oftentimes are made of combustible material placed right next to the home. So as you can see on the screen, we had a shed that we ignited. And then you can see all the instrumentation on the target, which is the home to the left of the screen. And we're measuring all the heat flux, the energy that's coming off of that, and trying to determine what the best distance is for those to be away from the primary structure. And now we're doing this with every configuration. That home specifically has stucco siding. We're doing it with combustible siding. We're doing it with hardy board. We're doing it with all kinds of different ones. In that case, it had vinyl windows. It had vinyl gutters. And we're doing it with metal gutters and doing it with fiberglass windows and recreating this over and over and over and at varying different distances and the orientation at which the doors and the windows sit from the ADU to get a real true sense for exactly how these things react, and then give that information to the public. So when they're placing these things on their home or in and around their home, they can make the best decision for their landscape. So some of the next steps, and Senator, I see your hand up. I'll get to you. This is my last slide. So what are we doing next? We're updating our fire hazard severity zone maps just to align them, because we just put out the local responsibility area maps. So now there's a little bit of gaps and holes between where the SRA was, the state responsibility area, and the LRA. So we're going to close those up. We got to finish the 0 to 5 defensible space. We are working cooperatively with the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. We're going to get the first structure susceptibility modeling document out by the end of the year. Most notably here, insurance alignments, working with the California Department of Insurance. I just got asked to be on a task force with CDI to help get these alignments in place. We had a framework that we built in 2020 that is called Safer from Wildfire. And that really aligned the insurance companies on the things that mattered, because some insurance companies were requiring 300 feet of defensible space, where some were requiring 100. And this said, no, the standard is these things. And that's available on the California Department of Insurance website for that standardization of Safer from Wildfires. Focusing on land use planning, that what I mentioned, so that we're building better when we start to build. Training, not just the fire service, but training people for evacuations, for learning how to make their home more safe, and constant research. What we learned, if anything, through COVID is that people want to have the science behind it and understand what we're saying that from a research perspective. So that's it. I know it was a lot and it was fast, but I think I saw Senator's hand up first. So
yeah, Senator Short.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for your presentation. So a couple of different things. Do you have a series of codes? Are they different? Are those codes different for, say, an urban landscape versus a rural? And then if you could choose the top 2 or 3, especially if you're talking existing homes, are there 2 or 3 of the codes that seem to be the most critical? And then just number 3, I still don't see anything on fire district preparedness. Like if our fire districts, we have our districts that have invested in equipment and manpower and things like that. Does that too, aid in preparedness? Because I just think that continues to be a missing link.
So I'll start with the third one. We're the fire districts, they all receive specific training for WUI. And well, let me start with the first one first about the different codes because this will help set the stage for the last one. There are different codes for different areas of the state. In the state responsibility area, or what we call the SRA, if you're in the moderate, high, or very high, it doesn't matter. All the things are required, all the mitigations. So the minimum fire safe regulations, Chapter 7A, all the things. If you're in the local responsibility area, it is tiered. So in the very high, all the things apply. In the moderate, January 1, 2026, Chapter 7A of the Building Code will be required. But that will be the only thing in the high. In the moderate, there's nothing required. And this has been a source of contention for a lot of us because we're using the exact same model to model the SRA, and we're requiring everything. But in the LRA, we're using, again, the same model, but we're tiering the way that we approach mitigations. So yes, there are different standards. So in the SRA, well, anywhere across the state of California, local jurisdictions have the opportunity to enact ordinances that are more strict than the state minimum standard. So if in the event that an area wanted to make their defensible space 0 to 5 right now, they could do that. And that would be more strict than what the state minimum is. So there's always that opportunity to do it. And can you repeat your second question? Sorry.
No, just especially for existing structures, if there were the top 2 or 3 that you would really recommend pushing, I'm assuming the 0 to 5 feet is probably at the top of the list. But if there are 2 or 3 things that you as a fire agency see as, you know, just really those top ones to really reduce your fire risk, what would those be?
Yeah, great question. And I'll give you those 3 in just a second, but I would refer you also to NIST. Their technical note, the hazard mitigation methodology, or what we call HMM. That technical note that's written by NIST was a collaborative effort between a whole bunch of us in the research realm and CAL FIRE to do exactly what you just said. Prioritize the things that need to be done so that when we go out and in our financial assistance program, we develop the assessment application that we use to determine what we're going to do on that home based on that hazard mitigation methodology. So we're able to, you know, in that criteria, work down from the number 1 to the number 13 thing that of importance. So the number 1 thing is your roof. And what we found, when we require what we call a Class A roof by construction or by assembly, which is a asphalt shingle, metal, concrete tile, those types of roofs. But what we found was in doing an assessment, an aerial assessment, using some AI to just kind of look across the landscape, is only about 3% of the state have a wood shake roof. So what becomes the issue is the age of the roof, right? It starts to degrade over time so that they have the right roof, but because it's 18 to 22 years old, it's probably delaminating and probably needs to be fixed. But what we found is in that assessment, 3% of people had a wood shake roof. So that's not the number 1 problem. But if that's your number 1 issue, if that's the issue at your house, it is the number 1 problem. So as we work down, basically from the roof down, of course, when we talk about not conflating home hardening with defensible space, but the 0 to 5 now, if we go in number 2 for defensible space, would be to clear that vegetation immediately around your home. And it's not just vegetation. A lot of us keep what I call junk. My team says I have to say treasures. People keep a lot of those around their home, and we need to educate people to move those treasures away from their house and don't stack things right up next to it. And or when you live in a climate that's cooler and you want to have access to your firewood, and it's very nice, I do the same thing and bring the wood right up next to my house so I don't have to walk out in the mud or the rain to go get it. Just make sure when we start to transition to a wildfire season that we move that wood away from the home, and not keep it right next to us. So I think, and then vents would be the third one. A lot of older homes have 1/2-inch vents that we're in. And not only does it let a lot of critters in, but it allows embers that carry enough heat energy that remains in them to ignite the material inside your home. So retrofitting vents is a paramount thing. You need to do that like quickly. So I'd say you got roof, 0 to 5, and vents in the top 3 there. So then finally to your fire district's question about the state of California has, like I said, a master mutual aid agreement. So even in those fire districts, when there's a fire in the state responsibility area, we're going. No matter if there is a fire district there, we are automatically dispatching those resources in addition to the CAL FIRE resources based on the level of dispatch. So we have a high, medium, and low dispatch in those, and those determine the number of resources that go. In a high dispatch, it's 10 engines, 2 bulldozers, 2 airplanes, 2 helicopters. That's every single time there's a fire. All of those resources, plus water tenders, plus chief officers, plus a whole myriad of things. But those fire districts are included in that in an automatic agreement. So they get dispatched as well. So those districts get bolstered through CAL FIRE in the state responsibility area.
Thank you so much. Steve Brooks.
Thanks, Chief. So you're probably familiar. We don't have a CAL FIRE equivalent, if you will, here in the state of Washington, so a bit more unique or nuanced in how state resources are applied. But I'm curious. I think I understand that I guess Paradise is our best example today. So in communities where CAL FIRE is the sole or exclusive provider of fire-related services, is that primarily a contractual relationship, or is there an annexation process? And the follow-on to that is, in an instance like what I assume happened in Paradise, where there is a loss or significant damage of your infrastructure at CAL FIRE, are you all self-insured for that? Is that a part of the relationship with you and the city, that's a joint obligation to restore that infrastructure? And do you leverage temporary facilities in order to do that, to put your crews back in those high-risk areas if you've lost stations or had significant damage to them?
All right, thank you for those questions. Yes. So in the state responsibility area, there are incorporated cities that are in those areas. There are fire districts that are in those areas. And CAL FIRE has the primary financial responsibility to suppress all wildland fires. We do not have primary responsibility for structure fires. That is left up to the local county and their resources. In the event that they don't have the resources to be able to do that, we can enter into what we call a contractual agreement, a Schedule A agreement, to provide that fire protection on their behalf. So that would be an agreement that we would have with them. An administrative contract is what we call it. And that would allow us to do, based on the contract, that would get them dispatch, capabilities. It would get them law enforcement capabilities from us. It could get them fire marshal capabilities from us. It just depends on how that specific contract was set up and what that local jurisdiction was willing to pay for. But in the event that that they have the resources, then they may choose to do that fire protection on their own for that. For the medical aids, for the vehicle accidents, for the structure fires as the primary responding resource. But CAL FIRE would still go to those because they're in our jurisdictional area, in the state responsibility area. We would still roll to those as automatic aid. So we are an all-risk agency. We go to every call for service. We wouldn't just leave it up to them. We still roll. So your next question, are we self-insured? Yes. We do not leverage or require that contract for them to provide to rebuild. If our facilities are damaged or destroyed as a result of wildfire, then the state would pick up the bill for a capital outlay, emergency capital outlay project for rebuild. There would be temporary facilities established. They have been several times, unfortunately, and our crews are set up in either a modular home with like a carport to cover the apparatus until those emergency funds could be secured and the new station is built.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kenton Bryan.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief Bigelow, for your presentation. I'm wondering, I'm going to follow up a little bit on Senator Short's inquiries. As this group looks to trying to develop standards for mitigation resilience and providing a grant program for those purposes, are there lessons we can learn from California about the best way, again, this is kind of following up on what Senator Short was saying, what's the best way to have the maximum impact on the largest number of highest threatened homes or neighborhoods? Are there things that you have seen or what you've talked about in California that Washington can learn from as we design a program that will at least initially probably have limited resources and has increasingly high wildfire threat across large portions of the state that hasn't, some of this work's been done, but some of it, we're really just kind of getting started in many ways. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
That's a great question. I think as you all are deliberating on the development of this, I think one of the primary questions you'd have to ask is, what is it that we want to do? Do we want to be in the fuel reduction business, or do we want to be in the home retrofitting business, or is it a combination of the two? That with limited resources, when you start to retrofit homes, the money goes very quickly because those things are not cheap. So if you're, as an example, we were appropriated $50 million from the California Legislature to stand up the financial assistance program I spoke about earlier for home hardening. We're leveraging FEMA hazard mitigation grant dollars to make that money go further. In 2 of the pilot communities, we're getting a 75-25 match. In the other 4, we're getting a 90-10 match. So that money's going a lot further. We have a tremendous amount of money, but at $40,000 to $50,000 a home, even at $156 or $180 million, you start to divide that. That's only a couple thousand homes. So when you're talking about a state in California, just in the SRA, that has upwards of 900,000 homes just in the SRA, that money isn't going to go very far. So is it the right thing to do to help those that can't help themselves, because that program is solely focused on financially disadvantaged, is socially vulnerable, people that have limited ingress and egress in their homes? They maybe don't even have access to a motor vehicle, very strict parameters that they have to for them to be accepted. I guess you just have to decide, is that the direction that makes the most sense for all of you? Or if your homes are close enough together in communities that you can do some community fuels reduction to push that fuel back away from those around the communities and invest in that manner to give those communities a fighting chance, while then educating them on the things that they can do. And here's the problem. This is kind of just a frank philosophical problem that I often tell people is, even in California, we're faced in this kind of almost what I'll call insurmountable hill. And we're all looking up to the top where we feel like we need to be to get this wildfire problem under control. But the problem is, it's really hard to climb because people are faced with very hard decisions in their lives, like medicine, gasoline to go to work, food for their kids, braces, school supplies, all these things that are competing interests. And then we ask them, hey, we need you to invest $50,000 to $60,000 in your house to make it more wildfire resilient. And oh, by the way, there's no guarantee you're going to get any insurance if you do. Because the insurance market in California is so volatile, and it's really hard to even get a policy unless you've done those things. But you might not even, and you might have to be, or you might be on the FAIR plan and it's $10,000 a month. So we're at a really huge tipping point right now with that particular portion. So we feel as the state, it's really important for us to be able to help people in any manner we can, whether that's fuel reduction to give them a fighting chance, and ingress and egress to be able to just get out in the event that there's a wildfire, but also do community-wide protection around that specific community to ensure that the wildfire stays in the wildland area and doesn't make it directly to the homes. So I think it's a combination of all of those things that have to be done. But when you're just starting out and you have limited funds, it's going to be it'll be up to you all to decide which one is the most prudent path forward for what you're trying to do.
Thank you. I'm going to take us to a question in the chat from Shannon Marbat. Actually, it's 2 questions. How is the CAL FIRE grant program funded? And what would make one homeowner more likely to qualify for a grant than another homeowner?
Hey, great question, and I'm remiss that I didn't clarify this more, but so thank you. So the grant, there are 12 different grant programs from CAL FIRE, all of which are funded. Well, they're funded in different ways. So that some of them are funded through the general fund. Some of them are funded through what's called Cap and Invest, which is our greenhouse gas reduction fund. And some now are funded by Proposition 4, what we call the climate bond. So there are multiple different funding sources that we can draw from to administer these programs. And to the second question, for the wildfire prevention grant program, that's a competitive process for nonprofit organizations, 501c3 only. So those groups would then get the money and then administer the program through their 501c3 directly to homeowners. So if there was a process, like let's say it was a community chipping program where people would bring the material to the front of their home and then the chipper would come and chip it, that would be up to that group that got the grant for us to do the work to decide who was eligible or who would receive the chipping. For the financial assistance program for home hardening, this program was had some specific criteria from the legislature that we were required to follow to determine where we would even do the pilots. Once that was determined, we went to the local group and said, and the local CAL FIRE unit and said, hey, where's your most vulnerable community? Let's go there. So we went and toured different communities, and then we used that nonprofit group, whether it was a fire safe council, a resource conservation district, to be the voice for us, the advocate for the program, because they're the ones that are the most in tune with the community, instead of one of these guys with a badge coming on and be like, hey, I'm not the government, I'm here to help. We didn't want to do that. We wanted the community members to engage. So then there's an application process, and there's certain criteria by which you have to qualify. If you're over the threshold, you just have to provide financial, you have to invest a little bit. So if you're over the low to moderate income or the LMI by a certain percentage, then the amount you have to pay for the program goes up by a certain percentage. So there's several different ways, but we don't, except for the home hardening program, provide direct financial assistance to individual homeowners. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Tony Craven.
You said the cost to do the modifications is running around 40 to 50,000. What does that include, or is that excluding the roofs and mainly looking at siding and windows and the 5 feet?
Yeah, great question, Tony. And so when we partnered with FEMA for the hazard mitigation grant dollars, they required us to do a cost benefit analysis. And that cost benefit analysis gave us that threshold of roughly $50,000. That's where our cap was. So to get a home to Chapter 70 of the building code or a wildfire prepared designation would probably cost more. I think it would be more in line with what Mayor Crowder was saying, as opposed to the 40 and 50. They're able to, through their grant, give each of those homeowners more money than what we are. But based on the criteria that FEMA set up for our program, we're only able to go up to a maximum of 50. But that's all inclusive of the things. So if we can get a roof done and we can get the siding done for less than $50,000, then that's what we do, is the maximum amount that we can get for that dollar.
Thank you. All right, I'm hoping we can do these last two raised hands quickly.
And I'll answer the ones in the chat, through the chat.
I think we've gotten all the stuff in the chat, other than maybe Juliana's question, which I'm not sure is actually for you, and we can come back to. Michael DeLong, what are you wondering?
Hey, this is Michael DeLong from the Consumer Federation of America and Consumer Advocacy Group. Thank you for your presentation. Question, you've talked a lot about how when you start to retrofit homes, the money goes very quickly because those things aren't cheap. Are there any like overall ideas of how much money it would require to say like harden the 10% of homes that are most vulnerable to wildfires or something else along those lines, or to make like a big meaningful impact? Because from where I'm coming, it seems like ideally we should want everyone in like the most vulnerable areas to have a hardened home.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I, in the perfect Frank world, would love to be able to go to these people, because I've gone to their homes. I've looked at them in the eye. I've spoke to them. I've walked around their houses with them and identified the deficiencies and the vulnerabilities of their home. And in some cases, and to me, it's heartbreaking that we can't do everything. And I wish we could. I wish we could pay for all of it to do for everybody. The reality is that we don't have enough money to do that for everybody. And FEMA has some pretty strict rules around how much we can do per home based on that initial assessment. We've gone back to them to try to revise that CBA based on actuals, because now we have 45 homes that we've done. So we can say, look, I know the CBA said this, but what we're actually seeing is this. And in order to get people up to the standard that you're talking about, Michael, and getting them to be wildfire prepared, we need this much to do it. And those talks are happening now with FEMA. So my boss says I'm too optimistic sometimes, but I'm optimistic that we'll get to a point where we'll be able to adjust that to be able to get those homes to that standard. But again, I'll refer you to that hazard mitigation methodology that I spoke about earlier to give you the full rundown of everything that needs to be done, and it puts it into density too. So it takes into account homes that are right next to one another within 10 feet. It goes out to 50 feet and then beyond 50 feet. And those things change based on where you are. So some things are really, when you're that close to one another, house to house ignition, getting that home bolstered up next to that house becomes a primary concern, because that's where most of your heat's going to come from should this house catch on fire. When you're more than 100 feet away from your neighbor, it really becomes about embers and about the ember production and embers getting into your house to bolster your home for that. So I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, Michael, let me know.
Thank you.
Right.
Steve Brooks, last question.
And I will try to make it quick. Thanks. Chief, are you able to just quickly define or describe how the SRA in California is defined and reviewed and maybe redefined? And then also, is there a single map point where that's visible to other public safety entities and the general public?
Yes, and using my technological wizardry, I can bring up a map for you here very quickly and share it. But the way that it's defined, so Public Resource Code, which defines the authority that CAL FIRE operates under, has very clear criteria by which we judge lands to determine whether they fit into SRA. That can be found on the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection's website. It's things like annual precipitation, being at the toe of the slope for lands. There's a whole bunch of designations, like less than 250 dwelling units within a certain amount of acres. So all those things, those criteria get judged every 5 years. So we then classify lands as SRA. So we just finished the 2025 review. That went into effect July 1st of this year and will remain into effect for the next 5 years. However, there are automatic changes for land ownership changes, like for the federal government to state government or incorporated cities that get annexed out into the SRA. So there are automatic changes that can be made. But what I'm talking about is land use changes from agriculture to non-agriculture, those types of things. But let me move one or two things around on my screen. I'll quickly show this because I know we're probably wanting to move to the next, but more again, share this. So this viewer can be found on our website. It's our SRA viewer. So you can see the
We
land.
can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it yet?
No. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, please, thank you for interrupting.
Now we see it.
Oh, great. Okay, so this land in the center here, the gray, is the LRA that I've talked about, the local responsibility area, our more urban areas. So you can see like Fresno, you can see how developed out this area is, and it's a lot of agriculture use. as you start to move into the unincorporated areas of the counties, this becomes less or not agriculture and becomes more of a wildland environment all the way up through, and I'll back out here, all the way up through to the forest, which is the federal government's responsibility. And of course, my T3 connection here in downtown Sacramento is failing me. So this is a good example. We have the LRA here, developed, urban, ag, SRA, unincorporated wildland areas, and then the green here is the U.S. Forest Service responsibility. And you can see there are areas of state responsibility, of state ownership within the federal government. There's also a whole other thing called direct protection area, or DPA, where there's another imaginary line that draws through here that articulates who has direct financial assistance or direct fire protection responsibilities in that specific area. But I won't bore you with all that.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I think that there's just one question that we missed that's in chat. So I'm going to pop it in to the chat again, Chief Bigelow, so that you can answer that. And Juliana is okay for us to keep moving to our next presenter, and then we're going to come back to Juliana's comment. So Juliana, thank you for that. So with that, Kimiko Barrett, Senior Wildfire Research and Policy, Headwaters Economic. I want to hand it over to you.
All right, terrific. Can everybody see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, wonderful. And I think this is actually a really great follow-up to Chief Bigelow. I think thank you all, fellow panelists and everybody who is taking the time to sit in on this webinar. I think hopefully I can expand on some of what you just heard from Chief Bigelow and the previous panelists, as well as answer some questions and then help field those that I can't respond to. And what I have been asked to speak about are the costs for wildfire resistant standards, many of the mitigation measures that you did just hear from Chief Bigelow and others that are heavily informed through NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, as well as IBHS, Insurance for Business and Home Safety, and other partners that we work with at the national scale. So their relevancy for Washington and parts of the West, there is some discrepancy there, obviously, in terms of market, supply, contractor needs. So what I'll be providing is a framing of this larger 30,000 foot perspective, but happy to answer questions accordingly. So let's get into it. Looking at what we are talking about for wildfire costs and building to wildfire resistant standards. Very quickly, again, my name is Kimiko Barrett, Kimmy. I am a senior wildfire researcher and policy analyst with a group called Headwaters Economics. We are an independent nonprofit research group. We are based in Montana, but we work across the country with communities on the ground, helping surface and interpret data to inform land management decision making and other areas, not just wildfire, but across the board, from everything to public lands and flood mitigation, and to the area that I lead our research efforts in, which is wildfire. And a lot of this is heavily informed by the work we do on the ground with communities through our Community Planning Assistance for Wildfire program, or CPAW. This is a program that works explicitly to prepare communities ahead of a wildfire event through primarily land use planning, regulatory measures, community comprehensive plans, WUI code development, other aspects through the regulatory mechanisms that help compel and encourage wildfire mitigation measures at the property level as well as at neighborhood scale. So through these two programs, we do a lot of the research efforts, again, collaborating with a lot of the national institutes, including URL, IBHS, and others that specialize in structural ignition and research. So I'm going to break this down into looking at three primary components of a roadmap. First, looking at this aspect of homes at fuel. I really don't want to be too redundant to what you just heard from the previous panelists, but I'll cover this at the large scale because that helps understand and how we can then inform some of these questions around the costs. And then what does this mean for the benefits and the opportunities yielded through a better investment proactively rather than having to spend that money in the response, recovery, and rebuilding effort. So let's look at homes as fuel. What do we mean by this? And again, apologies for any redundancies that you may have heard. I'll go through this relatively quickly. But you heard IBHS thrown out there. This is the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They have a hangar essentially over in North Carolina. I've been there and seen them build and then demolish and destroy structures due to various scenarios of structural ignition exposure, whether through embers or direct flame or through radiant heat, the three primary ways with which a home burns down. I'm going to talk you through a demo here, a video demonstration that was done. What you're looking at is a duplex. It is modeled off of a structure and a footprint that we provided them based off of actually a home near me in Park County, Montana. So it's very representative of an Intermountain West structure. It's got wood siding, cedar siding on the left. It's got bark mulch around it, a wood deck, a wood door. The entire structure is covered in the same Class A type roof, which is asphalt composition shingles. And then on the right-hand side, you're seeing a version of that same duplex, but it's built with fire-resistant materials. And so I'll talk you through what happens here. We're about 4 minutes into the demonstration at this time. I'm assuming the video playback is occurring. Kelly, can I get a thumbs up? Beautiful. So what you're seeing is ember exposure to this structure, and you can see the tiny little flames in the left and the right hand corner, equal velocity and speed to both sides of the structure. On the left hand side, you can see that very quickly that bark mulch was the first to ignite. That's not surprising. It's a large surface area. It's often chemically treated. You heard Chief Bigelow talk about that importance of the 0 to 5 foot perimeter around a home known as the non-combustible zone. But with that high wind, you're also seeing those flames spread horizontally and very quickly vertically up the scene of the home into that open eave space. And those vents, again, as you heard Chief Bigelow said, are not flame and ember resistant, allowing ember intrusion directly into that attic space. Think about what's stored in your attic. It's often Christmas ornaments, blankets, old boxes, furniture, cardboard boxes, everything that's highly, highly flammable. And that will eventually ignite the home from that attic space, burning it from the inside out. On the right-hand side, alternatively, you saw the same version of that home as I noted earlier. This is a home built with ignition-resistant construction materials, meaning that there is fiber cement siding. This is also commonly known as hardy plank. The decking board is made of fire-retardant wood. The door itself, the pedestrian front door, is fiberglass. The windows are dual pane tempered glass, meaning that they will not break under any intense heat, which often occurs during radiant heat, allowing that glass to shatter, fall outwards or inwards, and again, the direct flame into the interior of the home and burning it from the inside out. And as I noted earlier, the mulch around the home itself is pea gravel, meaning it's non-combustible. There's no vegetation, and this is critically important for minimizing that exposure area to the vertical siding of the home, allowing it to climb upwards into that open eave space and into those vents or into the windows or doors or any opening and penetrations. So this experiment was done 3 different times. Every time the home on the right survived with minimal smoke damage, while the home on the left was damaged and destroyed within 10 minutes. So there is evidence out there. We also obviously see this through post-fire analyses in which the home itself is still or is burning while the green vegetation around the home still stands, indicating that that home is indeed the source of fuel itself. So now that we've covered that, what does it cost for some of these essential mitigation measures that we've heard being discussed previously? I'm going to break this down by drawing on 3 different studies that we have done over the course of the past 10 years. The first one was done in 2018. This was done in partnership with IBHS, and this was looking at new constructional costs for building to wildfire resistant standards, again, based off of that home that you just saw that was burned, looking at the cedar siding, the roof, the walls, and the decking. I'll go through each of these here in more detail. We updated the study in 2022, looking specifically at California, looking at Chapter 7A compliance and what that would cost for meeting that mitigation measure, loosely built off the IBH standards of both wildfire prepared home baseline as well as that plus. And then the last one is the retrofitting costs. And I know that this is the big gorilla in the room, and I can cover these all as I walk through this here. So let's look at new construction costs before I jump into the retrofits. Retrofits are really sticky. There's a lot of nuance and complication when you start to break down the cost. So I'm going to save that for the second part of this presentation. Looking at new construction, it's a little bit easier to break this down because you're looking at no legacy issues. There's no footprint to have to build off of. New construction by far is going to be more cost effective than looking at retrofits. So new construction costs. The way we did this study was we broke it down into the 4 primary components of the roof, the deck, the near home landscaping, and then the exterior walls. So let's start with the roof. When you look at things like the vent replacement, as noted earlier with that flame and ember resistant vents, or if you wanted to apply mesh screening, either case, this goes a great way in trying to reduce ember intrusion into the interior of the home. So you're often looking at the gable ends or in the soffit space. Gutter systems, non-combustible with a metal gutter guard, looking at soffit and fascia replacement as well, and then the entire roof covering itself, often meeting Chapter 7A or beyond. So that's either asphalt, tile, metal is commonly used. Some very rare instances, you might even have an irrigated roof. But all said and done, you're looking at a cost addition of around $6,000 for all of those pieces when you look at the upgraded version to wildfire resistant standards. This does not include a metal roof. This is for an asphalt replacement over. When you're looking at exterior walls, this one's interesting because the baseline comparison we used for a home that's commonly seen in the Rocky Mountains, particularly in places like Montana, is a cedar siding home. When you replace that cedar siding with fiber cement, it's actually going to be a cost reduction of around $12,000. And this is fiber cement, hardy plank, commonly used on the market. For many aesthetic preferences, it's people here in Montana, they like to have their wood siding, therefore it costs a little bit more. And again, as noted with various supply chains, this can vary, but fiber cement, very commonly used, is actually more affordable than wood siding. And then you look at the windows and the doors replacement as well as part of that package. When you complement it with a deck, this is going to cost a little bit more because instead of using wood, such as pine or oak, you're going to replace it with plastic composite decking surface or a non-combustible. The one that's used here is plastic composite. Technically, that's ignition resistant, but is not non-combustible. The most common product out there right now is Trex siding, or Trex decking board rather, and this is going to cost about $2,000 more when you look at the entire surface area of a deck replacement. And then the last one's that landscaping, very importantly, that 0 to 5 foot non-combustible zone. And this is a replacement of bark mulch with pea gravel or rock. And in that case, you're going to spend about $2,500 more. However, there is many, many benefits to the durability and maintenance of gravel over mulch that should be noted. So collectively, the entire package, again, for new construction, so this would have to meet either WUI code standards, IBHS baseline standards, or Chapter 7A compliance. And you're looking at a very neutral cost comparison. In some cases, even reducing that cost to $2,000. But really, when you think about the overall package, it's going to be on that range of 2% to 10% based off of various building codes, the compliance mitigation pathways that a homeowner chooses, market supplies, trends, potentially tariffs, all of these things account for up to a 10% addition over the original building cost footprint. New construction only. Now let's get into the harder one, and this is retrofitting. And retrofitting is so complicated because of the many aspects that you heard Chief Bigelow talk about earlier. Whether a neighbor is within 30 feet of your home, whether you have wood fencing, what is your slope, what's your terrain, are you in a high wind area, do you have an RV parked in front of your house? All of these various nuances really complicate at that aggregated parcel level what it means for retrofitting and what needs to be retrofitted. You may not need to retrofit all sides of a home if that exposure area is not the same equivocally across all 4 sides of that home, if that makes sense. And so there's all of these details that really complicate this retrofitting piece. And again, as you heard Chief Bigelow, it makes it super expensive when you start to think through all of those mechanics. Let's break it down. We expanded our study to look at the additional, we broke apart the eaves and the gutters, as well as the windows and doors to look at these as 6 components in terms of the exterior of the home. So when we talk about the mitigation measures that we accounted for, it's things on the roof and the gutters like the metal flashing. So you're thinking through the 3 types of ignition that burn a home down. And that is embers, accounting for 90% of home loss. It is direct flame, in terms of actual flame impingement onto a building material or surface area. And then the last one is radiant heat. And once the first home starts to burn from often ember intrusion, burning that home from either the outside in or inside out, think about everything inside that home that is so flammable. And it's things like the carpet, the appliances, the electronics, the furniture, everything that's going to release a significant amount of BTU. And when that energy release is sustained, it's going to burn the home for a really long time at a very, very hot temperature. And that is radiant heat. And so that's what you start to account for under a high wind event when you start to see these urban conflagrations and structure to structure spread. So to mitigate from one or more of those 3 forms of ignition resistance, then you start to account for these different building materials. So metal flashing, for example, can be used to reduce ember intrusion, burning when you start to think about accumulated debris on roof lines, embers landing on that, if there's metal flashing, means that there's no flammable surface area for those embers to actually ignite and lead to spotting and propagation. So similarly, roof to wall intersections, addressing metal gutters, looking at that Class A roofing and the vents themselves. Exterior walls, the retrofitting very similarly applied to new construction as well, but when you're looking at retrofitting are these different mechanics that would reduce ember, direct flame, or radiant heat. You're looking at non-combustible siding, mesh screening around foundational crawl space vents, metal flashing at deck to wall, or any vertical to horizontal surface areas. You're trying to address those critical intersections, looking at the vertical rises of the siding itself as a potential replacement. The eaves, very, very importantly, if there is the opportunity to enclose an eave, that can go a long way in reducing the lateral spread of flame impingement. That cannot often be the case. And so in that situation, you're looking at the ember replacement or the replacement of the vents themselves. If you can enclose them, then you want to use non-combustible soffits and a long linear flame and ember resistant vent as well. And then the non-combustible soffit and trim of the house itself. Looking at the doors and windows, looking at things like skylights, aluminum doors, non-combustible door surface if you can. Fiber glass is often used as a front or a side door. Dual pane double glass windows. These are often required for energy efficiency standards. Not often double pane and dual pane, but some, if you can meet that, that will go a long way in meeting that wildfire resistant measure and actually gets you to that wildfire prepared home and wildfire prepared home plus standard by IBHS. And then looking at decks, if you can get a non-combustible decking surface, that's great. That means that you either have concrete or flagstone. That's not often the case for many homeowners. And so one alternative is instead of replacing the entire decking surface, you can actually just replace those first 2 to 3 boards that are parallel to the siding of the home and replace it with a grate. Then you have to make sure that you have a non-combustible zone underneath as well. So it's thinking through all of these systems that collectively can bring down the risk profile of the property itself, but they all have to be complementary to one another. And that's what makes this retrofitting so challenging. And in addition to that, homeowners often don't know what this means. And so to try and provide the technical expertise to help build up that knowledge base of what retrofitting means and the costs associated with it also has to be considered as part of this. Near home landscaping, this is probably the more simple of all of them, looking at the vegetation management on the property itself, that near home combustible zone 0 to 5 feet out. And then when you think through fencing as a big one, this was demonstrated in the Lahaina fires in terms of having wooden fencing connecting structure to structure. That's essentially a wick leading flames directly from one burning home to the next. So replacing all of this is part of the scenario as well. So what does this cost? When you're looking at these good to better wildfire resistant measures, this is wildfire prepared home baseline, essentially. You're going to cost anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000. And I believe that this does align with what Chief Bigelow was saying. So you're looking at from the vent replacements to maybe not a roof replacement. Maybe it's as easy as installing that metal flashing or clearing out the debris, replacing a gutter system, looking at that fencing, looking at that first vertical rise of about 12 inches upwards from any vertical to horizontal surface areas, looking at the decking, if you can replace that deck board or certainly remove what's above and below it, other efforts around the mitigation and management of vegetation around the property itself. And this primarily addresses embers and to some degree radiant heat and direct flame. But when you're really trying to achieve reduction to all 3 of this, you're looking at the best or most optimal level of wildfire resistance. And this is going to cost on the scale of around $30,000 to $60,000 plus. Very, very dependent on what the home legacy issues may be. What are these various exposure areas within the property itself? And what are some of the considerations you need for footprint of the home, the specs, the size? Is it single, double story home? Is it a complex roof or not? All of these equate to what that total cost is going to be. But around $60,000 or plus can really achieve the highest levels of wildfire resistance. But this assumes something like a metal roof instead of an asphalt roof, a fully non-combustible deck, including like a metal decking surface and metal structural support system, including the foundation itself, fully non-combustible zone. Like fiber cement siding, if not a metal siding. So all of these factors can really increase the cost up if you're trying to achieve that highest level of wildfire resistance. And that might not be the case. So when you're looking at this, again, in achieving reduction to embers, direct flame, and radiant heat, you're looking at about $5,000 to $30,000. Overall, retrofitting can add about 10 to 20% to the original footprint cost of a house. But as I always note when I give these presentations, many of the most effective mitigation measures are also the most affordable. And it's essentially trying to remove the flammable surface area in and around the home, including the roof, the property around it, what's on and above the deck itself, and looking at that structure to structure fuel continuity from fences to hedges to where an RV may be located or a vehicle, a boat, anything like that that might be flammable and burn. And when it does, it will release that radiant heat threat. And those are the costs that can be captured. We know that many of the more difficult, challenging costs are those that go uncaptured and unaccounted for. And that includes, unfortunately, the impact to families, homes, and businesses. Lastly, what are the opportunities for doing this? Why invest early rather than spend money on the recovery and the rebuilding? Well, because that's really expensive, actually. And so when we think through some of these efforts, it's really important to note what I just discussed meets mutual hazard resiliency for other climate threats out there. And the best example I can give is actually a personal one where I live here in Montana. I'm in the Great Yellowstone Basin. We have katabatic winds that blow off that Yellowstone Bowl and come through the Yellowstone Valley. And my parents moved down the street from me and they asked me to come look at their house and provide a wildfire risk assessment. And when I did so, I was like, you know, you nailed it. You've got gravel mulch, you've got a metal roof, you've got enclosed eaves, fiber cement siding. It's a perfect house for wildfire resistance. And the architect was like, that's really funny. None of this was done with wildfire in mind. It was all done for high wind events. So I'm just trying to reiterate, a lot of these mitigation measures can also address these other hazard resiliency efforts. It's just not done with wildfire in mind. That's really important to note. The avoided losses, we know right now in LA alone, Chief Bigelow probably knows this better than anybody, the costs are enormous. We're looking at around $250 billion as the price tag from the LA fires alone. We do know that a lot of these costs are spent and paid for at that local jurisdictional level as well. And that comes in the many months and years following a wildfire event. Lastly, there are some marketing opportunities here in terms of workforce development. What does it mean to build to wildfire resistant standards? And this is how you can get contractors, landscape architects, the construction industry as a whole on board to start to understand that many homeowners are starting to ask for this. They want to build a home that's more resilient, more durable, safer, and easier to maintain over the long run. And then again, as I noticed, there's some great workforce development opportunities in this as well. Lastly, I want to end it with a couple kind of takeaway notes here, is that we know through an analysis that we did in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service that what we saw coming out of LA is not, unfortunately, the last time we're going to witness a wildfire disaster like that. And more than 1,000 communities in the country right now exhibit very similar characteristics in terms of density of homes, fuel vegetation, fuel continuity, wind direction, and transmission pathways that set it up for a very similar risk profile as what we witnessed in LA, what we witnessed with the Marshall Fire, the Camp Fire, the Lahaina Fire, and has played out over and over again. This will not be the last time we see such a disaster, unfortunately. And in fact, this was shared with me by a good friend coming out of California that was the post-fire analysis of the Bel Air Brentwood fire from 1961, in which the authors noted that prevailing structural conditions accelerated the spread of fire, that the roofs sent flaming pieces of wood that ignited other roofs, broke windows, landed in eaves, and that the flying embers and superheated air, what we now call radiant heat, was responsible for the conflagration and structure to structure spread, quickly augmenting the fire peril, and that these were architectural invitations to disaster that propagated this urban conflagration and wildfire disaster. This is a report that is over 60 years old. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is the normalization of these events. And what we do know is that we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we created them. Now is the time to start thinking about how, where, and under what conditions our homes are built with wildfire in mind. With that, I'll end it, as well as my contact information, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or if they come to you later, feel free to email me or give me a call. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you so much, Kimiko. We are tight on time, so I am going to invite questions to go into the survey, and we'll be sure to send them to Kimmy. There is one already in the chat, which I will send to you also. And thank you again for being here with us. let me hand over to Brian Powell, Catastrophe Risk Resilience Specialist, Center for Insurance Policy and Research. Brian.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I have
Yes, thank you.
setup here, so I'm testing it out today. So anyway, thanks for that. And also thank you for allowing me to come and speak to your group today. Yes, I'm Brian Powell. I'm with the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. I work in an area of the NAIC known as the CIPR, the Center for Insurance Policy and Research. This is the think tank of the NAIC. For those of you that may not be that familiar with the NAIC, it was established in 1871. So it's a pretty old organization, and its mission is really to work with state departments of insurance to help coordinate and standardize the insurance regulation and oversight across the country. We work with every state in the country, and we also work with all the U.S. territories around as well. So we have a very far outreach, deep reach, and also we've been doing it for a long time. I've been with NAIC for about 1.5 years now. I've worked with them off and on for the past several years, and I'm actually a retired deputy insurance commissioner from Alabama. So my role with the NAIC is to work within that CIPR and another organization we have known as the Catastrophe Risk Management Center of Excellence. This is where we actually take a look at these hazards and what can we do to help inform state departments of insurance on their risks and what's going on in their insurance market, as well as try to find some solutions, or at least part of a solution to help create perhaps a more a healthier and insurance market in their state, making sure that we have policies and insurance coverage that's affordable and available to everyone in the market. It's a daunting task, as you've heard from the previous presenters. The insurance keeps coming over. The affordability of it and the accessibility of it is a real issue in some states and in some areas, but it's not the case across the country. In some areas, we were in that situation where insurance was not perhaps as accessible or even affordable. But the market's changed because of some of the work that the departments of insurance did to help create a more balanced market. I'm going to attempt to share a screen here, and let's see how well this works out for us. Have a little slideshow that I'm going to present to you. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's see. How do we go forward here?
You should see an arrow on the bottom.
There it is. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So just want to go over briefly what we do at the Catastrophe Risk Management Center of Excellence. Basically built on 3 pillars: vendor models, education tools, and applied research. We launched this part of the CIPR in summer of 2022, and we found that it's been extremely helpful and useful to regulators around the country, in that it provides some bridges over some gaps that existed in terms of resources, and also kind of approaches to solving some of these insurance problems that we're seeing around the country. So we've kind of set this thing up in a kind of a circular operation. On this particular slide, you'll see in the middle where it says establishment of retrofit and grant resilience programs. That's kind of been the core of what the focus of the CAT COE. That's what we refer to the Catastrophe Risk Management Center of Excellence as the CAT COE. We really support that piece of the operational side of the CAT COE in working directly with insurance commissioners to establish their retrofit and grant resilience programs or risk transfer programs. Now, we'll say in the onset that this is not the end all and be all of all the issues and problems that arise in the insurance market, and especially when you start talking about reduction of risk. There are many pieces to that. This is only one, and it's a major piece to create a platform of sorts to build what we call a culture of resilience. And I'll get more into that a little bit later, and I'll give you some examples of how that has worked out for us. But we have we have a number of support elements that go into these grant and retrofit resilience programs. One is your CAT risk and assessment and prioritization, and I'll get a little bit more into that earlier. I believe that Chief Bigelow and Kent and Brian maybe alluded to, well, where do we invest our money? Where can we put money into an area to get maybe the biggest return on our investment, our highest ROI? Well, that's something that we do. We do those assessments, and we come up with where you can start as a state Department of Insurance to really get the highest level of return for your mitigation dollars. There's some things that states do to really kind of stabilize the market, put some guardrails in, and also do some consumer protection. One of those tools is a mitigation premium discount. I believe that you've probably heard of this in other states where there are discounts put in place for various different behaviors, such as mitigating your home against wildfire, and we actually work more than just in wildfire. We work in all perils. So when we look at severe convective storm, hurricanes, hail, we've worked in programs that where those types of guardrails have been put in place. Another thing we're able to do is we're able to go in and review Department of Insurance rate filings. We know where the rates, where geographically rates are what the rates are that are being charged. We also know the companies that are doing it. We also have loss data. We also have claims data. We have a number of resources that we can put into catastrophe modeling in order to really give the resources and information to departments of insurance that are establishing retrofit programs to really get the biggest return for their investment again. And then also through all of those pillars, we're also able to track the success of the programs and then provide ongoing support to enhance the program's performances. Just kind of another graph here that shows you the engagement piece of the CAT COE. We have an engagement team that engages directly with the insurance commissioners, as I mentioned before. There are partnerships that we have across the board in just about every stakeholder category you could imagine that will touch either insurance or touch the mitigation pieces of these programs. We also have an advocacy group. We do a lot of work to try to drive support to the industry on these types of programs, and we've been very, very successful with that. And also resources. That's another huge thing that we can bring. And I mentioned before the analytics that we do, the mapping that we do, the risk assessments, the distribution programs or distribution plans for your return on investment. All of those things are available through this organization to help departments of insurance establish effective programs and then also have a direct impact on the insurance market in their states. So why do we do this? Well, we've had conversation about, protecting the consumer and also, protecting property, protecting loss. But one reason that we set this program up particularly is because there's a need for consistency within the insurance industry. And a lot of times that's overlooked, but it's something that we focus on because we want to set a standard for the design, implementation, and operation of programs throughout the country. And it doesn't depend on the peril. It's all interrelated because the way that things like premium discounts are calculated, the methodology that provides that for us, the reporting that goes into that, especially when you start talking about interacting with departments of insurance, and then the way that they turn around and work through policy issues, and then also internal operations and the way that they interact with the insurance industry. There needs to be some consistency in the way that this is done. We need to set that expectation. Also with consistency, when we have that in the approach to program design and operation, we can provide expected outcomes. And this is important in that, consumers across the board will see this consistency. They have an expected outcome, and so does the insurance industry. And so do the partners that we interact with, just like with IBHS. I have weekly meetings with IBHS when for states that have adopted their standards, because they need to be able to plan their capacity for their operations. And right now, departments of insurance across the country that have adopted retrofit programs are the largest distributor for the IBHS standards. So we have a whole outlook on consistency that we work toward in order to set those expectation and expected outcomes for all of our stakeholders. As I mentioned before, we've worked heavily with IBHS, and we've mentioned today on several of the presentations the Wildfire Prepared Home Plus, and soon to be the Wildfire Prepared Home. I think it's neighborhood standard that's going to be issued by IBHS. Those are different standards that we're seeing programs adopt, along with the fortified programs. Fortified, if you're not familiar with that, that really addresses the wind and hail perils, hurricane peril, and we have a number of states that are using the IBHS standard. However, there are other standards that are coming into the market, and there's other research that's out there that would suggest to us that other standards will be coming probably within the next 5 to 10 years. When we work with departments of insurance, we don't do it alone. That means the CAT COE, we don't do this alone. Our engagement team doesn't do it alone. We have a number of partners that we bring to the table, and it's very important that we have these partners because we all have defined roles. The IBHS or any approved mitigation standard, whatever organization is supporting that, is certainly involved, but also the advocacy partners that we have, and we have a number of those across the country that do different things, whether it's engagement with your legislature, whether it's engagement with your home builders associations within the states, your licensure boards, and then typically through the NAIC and the work that I've done, especially with my background, since I work directly with the insurance commissioners. I really work with them not just to develop the actual program, but how to place that within a department of insurance. There are other state agencies that are involved. Who are they? What roles do they play? How do you engage with them? What are the things that you talk to them about? Those are the things that I work specifically with departments on, as well as funding sources. There's a lot of internal funding sources typically within states that are accessible. There is also several external sources that we can tap into and have brought those in, and some of those are pretty high level organizations across the country, such as the Federal Home Loan Bank System, and a few others that are able to put some serious capital behind these mitigation programs and help bring them to fruition. We also help departments of insurance manage their programs, the development of their programs. We have outlined a vast blueprint for building mitigation programs, and we also walk with the Department of Insurance along the way to help them make sure they meet their goals and timelines as far as getting a program in place. Typically takes about a year to get a viable program in place. But there are a lot of elements that go into the programs that are actually pretty complex. It's a lot more complex than people think it is, at least what you may see on the surface. And we work with them to make sure that we're working on the tasks that in a particular order so that we can get those tasks completed and the program comes together in a functional operational manner whenever they're perhaps legislatively inclined to act on it. We have a number of other resources that are available publicly, and we also have other resources available to departments of insurance that are kind of controlled. It's kind of on a lockdown site for us, but we provide a number of things that we encourage folks to go and take a look at. Now, we've recently set up this NAIC Connect site. If you've familiar with how connect sites work. We're building that out right now, but there's a lot of resources there for states to look at and to really kind of learn about the mitigation programs and what exists in the country and what it takes to actually stand one of these up. And then on our lockdown SharePoint sites, what we call the NAIC SharePoint site, that's where we have common access for departments of insurance to obtain documentation and our Gantt chart for our schedule for developing the programs. And it's all interactive. We work together collaboratively to set these programs up. Getting back to some of the applied research that we do, these are kind of an example here on number one of Department of Insurances that I've personally worked with and has helped establish retrofit programs with. And you'll see on the existing DOI wind mitigation program that's in Operation Alabama. I was architect of that program. It's called the Strengthen Alabama Homes Program. And I managed that program for over a decade. So have a really good foundation on what goes into establishing these programs, and then also what type of resources and support that you need to operate the programs, as well as what it takes to build a culture of resilience. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. Right now, we're working with a couple of states in the West looking at wildfire mitigation programs. With Washington State, the office there, I've spent a day with them doing a whiteboard session or conducting a whiteboard session, just giving them the basics of how these programs are put together and what's all involved with doing that. And then recently, I've been working pretty heavily with the New Mexico Office of the Superintendent for Insurance, and New Mexico is looking at creating a very similar template. And they've received some about $10 million worth of funding to stand up a program for this year, and so we're working closely with them on making sure that they meet their goals and get into the wildfire mitigation space. I think it was mentioned in one of the other presentations that sometimes you may have intentions of setting up a program that may mitigate against wildfire, but there are other perils perhaps in those areas that need to be addressed. We're certainly seeing that across the country, and those types of nuances are being built into programs, just like with Connecticut. They're doing a flood education component with that, and we're working with another partner called FM. It used to be FM Global, if you know what they're an insurance company that has developed some flood related mitigation components that will eventually be part of the Connecticut Department of Insurance's program. Tree mitigation is a big deal. Tree fall is a huge deal with some of the states that are protecting the homes against wind. So there's a standard for tree mitigation that we're looking at in Maine specifically, and working it into their program processes. Some of the things that we also work on is we do rate regulation research. We find out why and how rates are regulated within states, and then what could be done from a policy perspective to perhaps change that and make it more conducive and affordable for homeowners. We've been working on a project with Colorado for wildfire smoke remediation. That's been pretty interesting. I mentioned the mitigation premium discounts. Those are things that we can calculate. We can value the cost or the value of mitigation that you do in your home. Some states mandate, some states have voluntary discounts that they've put into the market as an incentive for insurance companies to write or to give to homeowners and make the insurance more affordable. And typically those will follow these grant programs. And we have a number of other tools that are out there. We have a ton, like I mentioned before, we have a lot of data that we can use to that we can run analysis on in order to basically calculate what your return on investment is and where you should invest the money for your mitigation dollars. Just to the right, you'll see this little schematic there of maps. That's one layer of a risk map that we've created. We have it for the entire nation. I believe that is actually for wildfire, and So the lighter color areas, I think, are where the highest risks are based on insurance data that we have from the industry. And we also have in-house, we have licenses for models, catastrophe models that we're actually running for various applications to support the mitigation programs for states. We also do a number of education. We have a number of education opportunities for folks. We have a catastrophe 101 and 201 training course. And that really is in like the introduction to the use of CAT models and storm risk. We're also developing courses for rate filing reviews based on catastrophe models. And also there's another education opportunity that will be coming along through the NAIC soon, and that's going to be a workforce development training for departments of insurance that are looking to get more of a baseline understanding and knowledge for employees that are getting into the mitigation space and the resilience space. One thing that I did find as a deputy insurance commissioner and running the program in Alabama was that there was a need for a more qualified workforce to get into this type of work. And then as I transitioned to the NAIC and worked with other departments of insurance, I started seeing the same thing. So we're on a quest now to develop a level of training and even a national designation for folks that have completed the training, and that will start creating more of a baseline knowledge for a workforce that can help support all of these efforts that we are creating. Just some contact information for my team. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Just email me directly, and I'll be more than happy to either take your questions or talk to you more about the mitigation work that we're doing. So yeah, so that's my presentation, and if
Thank you, Brian.
you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them for me.
Yeah, we have a couple minutes. Any questions for Brian? Clinton.
Thank you, Brian. So as I look through the slides and hear what you're saying, I'm very curious about the research you're doing in the area of discounts, premium discounts, et cetera. Those seem like they're easier to calculate in like a fortified situation where, if you do mitigation to your home, what the outcome, scientifically speaking, would be in case of an event. But in the case of wildfire, of course, you can do the things to your home, but if your neighbors don't do it, you might still suffer significant damage, due to heat or embers, et cetera. So I'm just curious what you can tell us a little bit more about the research that you've done, and whether or not you've been able to demonstrate a connection between wildfire-related mitigation and the premium discounts that are recommended, that may or may not be recommended through the NAIC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I can say about it is that this is really a new kind of cutting edge technology and territory for all of us, really. The thing is we do have pretty good models, catastrophe models that can be run to kind of account for some of the mitigation. Understanding that insurance companies are using basically the same models to price their insurance, right? And what's more is it's not just the insurance companies, but it's also the reinsurance costs that go into this. And for you guys that may not know what reinsurance is, that's the insurance that insurance companies have. So there's a loaded cost typically in premiums that are attributed to the reinsurance piece. So we have catastrophe models that take all of this into consideration, looking at the risk, looking at past losses and what those claims were. That's really into this calculation. We developed a methodology for the wind piece of this and the hurricane piece of this, and we've tested this a number of times, and we're really I think we're getting really good at that, and we're able to produce reports and then affect that in the market. So I'm hopeful that what we're doing on the wildfire side is pretty good too. considering that the insurance companies are kind of doing the same thing but on the reverse when they're creating your rates that you're paying. So we're trying to compare apples to apples on this.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to take us to David for talking about the responsibilities. Dr. Gelman, would you put your comment or your question in the chat or into the survey for us, please? Thank you so much. David, setting up our August 5th meeting and what we need to continue to talk about the responsibilities in the legislation, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. And thanks to all the speakers today. That was really insightful discussions. We're going to have one more presentation come up next Tuesday. Dr. Jacob Gelman's going to share some thoughts with us. And then we're transitioning a little bit to more facilitated discussions. We want to hear from the members to understand if you need more information, different information, and trying to figure out how are we going to get to the point where we can provide the legislature with some recommendations. And as you think about that, I want to remind you that you can go to your work group's webpage at insurance.wa.gov, and you can look at the legislation to remind yourself what our assignment is. And it's really to provide a recommendation on 5 components. And we're going to take the meeting on the 5th after Dr. Gelman's presentation to begin talking about items C and D, where we're going to talk about the presentations that we heard about data sharing, the Department of Health's environmental health disparity map, how do we get that involved? And then we heard some discussion about wildfire risk scores, have conversations about what should homeowners understand about their wildfire risk. And then if we have time, we're going to dip into the enhancing wildfire mitigation at the community level. But probably, as Kelly mentioned, we're going to need another meeting on August 19th to really be able to dive into the first requirement to talk about existing or developing nationally recognized science-based mitigation standards, aligning all of our different programs so we have a common message to our consumers, and then talking about the establishing what a grant program could look like. So that is what our future holds, and I just want to encourage everybody, if you have questions, participate in the surveys, and we're going to follow up with the speakers from today so that they can provide any follow-up questions to you all, and really look forward to moving to the next phase of the work group after we hear from Dr. Gelman next week. So thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you then.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week.